Tell us a bit about Kirk the Kid. We've shared some, but I gather you come from a prominent family of CEOs. A long
We
line.
do. We were CEOs because we were Christmas and Easter only. That's when we went to church. That's how we were from a family of CEOs. But I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. My mom and dad were blue collar. Some Detroiters out there?
Ho-ho.
All right, there we go. Dearborn. Where were you? Oh, Grosse Pointe. That's the rich end of town, by the way. Yeah, just kidding. But grew up, my folks were both blue-collar assembly workers at Ford Motor Company. They had 3 of us by the time they were 21. So I have a 23-year-old who I don't think could raise a cat, let alone 3 children by 21. And so my dad would say that we ran out of money before we ran out of month. And in fact, we spent about a year of my young life on welfare, which is a really humbling experience to see the bottom of the barrel of life. In fact, I remember one day my grandfather bringing over food. He was director at Ford Motor Company, and I remember him bringing food over on a Sunday, and my brother and sister and I were laying on the floor, and he walked in the door. He couldn't see us, but we could see him. He had this look of shock because there was not a stitch of furniture in our house. We had a TV on milk crates. And he was shocked we had fallen so far so fast. And I remember that look on his face, and it affected me as a kid because someone you care about and love looked almost disgusted by where you were in life. So we moved around a lot. We were military without the military. I went to 10 schools between kindergarten and high school. And so we were bouncing around every year or so where the jobs were. My dad would always say we have to outrun the layoffs. So I saw kind of an interesting perspective on life. So not necessarily from a true CEO family, but a different kind. Yeah.
So your family's struggling. You graduate, no money to go to college, aptitude, but no money. How'd you end up at the University of Cincinnati?
Yeah, so I took a couple years off. I was a manager in a Wendy's restaurant, and my folks didn't have money to send me to college. So I worked for about 18 months, and there were 2 universities in the proximity, Miami University and the University of Cincinnati, and I chose the right one of those 2. No offense to any Miami grads in the crowd. But I remember, going, and my first 6 months there, I was in the business school, and Dean Zemansky's here, but I had a professor who noticed me. Her name was Ilsa Hawkins. I was walking out of class one day, and she said, "Hey, have you ever thought about going to law school?" And I had been working 60 hours a week and going to school full-time. I said, "Actually, no, I'm actually thinking about going to night school. I can't really afford, both from a physical standpoint and a monetary standpoint, to continue doing this." She said, "Well, go talk to my friend who's the assistant dean of undergraduate students. His name's Clyde Parrish, and see what he can do for you." Because at the time, I had been in school a year. I had a 4.0. I was just physically exhausted. And so I went down to make an appointment. And of course, the first appointment he could see me is like 6 weeks. So I was, in my mind saying, I knew this would happen. As I'm starting to walk away, he overheard it and he said, "Hey, do you have a minute? Because I have an opening." I said, "Sure." So I went down, 10 minutes, told him my story, where I'd come from, what I was doing, what my dreams and aspirations were. He came back 10 minutes later with a piece of paper that gave me a full ride scholarship.
What happens to dear Carly? What happens to you, and how did your faith change in all this?
She had kidney cancer. Her kidney, when they opened her up, she had a 1.25 pound Nerf football, essentially, picture that, consuming one of her kidneys. And we don't know how long she had it. She was way on the upper end of the range for this type of cancer that she had. So they took the kidney out, sewed her back up. She started her chemo. And all kinds of things occurred. She ended up having a surgical adhesion that blocked her colon. She had to go in and have a foot of her colon taken out. But that point is where my faith really dramatically changed. Because I, at that point, to be honest with you, during this phase, hated God. Hated God. How can God let my daughter suffer? How can God, who loves us, supposedly, let a kid suffer? And so when we took her to the hospital to get her colon clipped out. It was a long story, but I'm going to condense it dramatically. The day they found out, we'd been in the hospital 6 days. She had had a morphine drip every 10 minutes, click, 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 tube down her throat, couldn't even keep ice chips down. It was the worst thing as a parent I've ever been through. Saturday morning, I called the docs and I said, "You get her taken care of, or I'm taking her to Cleveland Clinic, or I'm taking her to Mayo, I'm taking her someplace else." So they did an emergency MRI and found, I remember, I'll never forget, we had taken her back and we were this, like, running down the hall. And they come and open the curtain, "Can we see you in the hall?" Which is never good. So we go out and the doctor said, "She has an adhesion. We think she has a perforated colon. We're going to have to open her up. We're going to have to let her air out for 2 weeks. We're going to clip it out. We're going to air her out. She's going to have to have a colostomy bag for 6 months. Here's my 6-year-old taking chemo with a colostomy bag, open wound for 2 weeks. This is what the prognosis was in that hallway that day. I hated God. So we went out, and they rushed her back. And then an hour and a half into her 5-hour surgery, boom, the door kicks open. The doctor comes out, full garb, gloves, blood, mask. Imagine how you'd feel. Nobody else in the waiting room except us. So, of course, you take her breath. He's like, great news. We opened her up, no perforation. We clipped her, put it together, sewed her back up, no colostomy bag. And literally, my wife and I just, we, of course, thanked the doctor. But when he left, we dropped to the floor and wept. And I'll never forget, this is where my faith journey became much more dramatic. My wife, as we came up to our knees, she looked at me and she looked me right in the eye. She grabbed me by the cheeks and said, can you imagine how God must have felt when his son was hanging on the cross screaming out, my God, why have you forsaken me? He could have stopped it, but he didn't because he loved us that much. We would have given our lives to stop Carly's pain, but we couldn't. That's God's love for us.
Do you have a favorite, passage or narrative from the Bible that just kind of keeps you anchored when all the world is tugging at you and you just need to sort of center yourself a little bit to make sure you stay grounded as a leader?
So two verses. James 4:8 says, draw near to God, and God will draw near to you.
Draw near to God, and God will draw near to you.
In Hebrews 11:1, faith is being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you cannot see. Those are the go-to scriptures for me. And again, in the story of my life, those are the things that I anchor upon, my faith and the fact that God will draw near to me if I only draw near to him.
Last question. It's a question I ask my students. I build my ethics course around 5 Qs, 5 questions. And the fifth and final one, this is see if you pass. Now, are you ready?
Ooh, all right. High pressure.
No, and there's no right answer, just what's personal for you. How do you stay ethically fresh? How do you stay ethically fresh? No one goes into work saying, I'm going to commit fraud today, I'm going to cheat today, I'm going to make an unethical decision. But through pressure, unintended consequences, goals and outcomes that are overvalued, maybe being jet lagged or having to drink too many, any number of reasons can cause a good person to do something stupid. How do you stay ethically fresh and on your game?
So one thing is, I always have somebody who I call my emperor has no clothes person to tell me when because I don't think it happens, it's a slow fade. I don't think it happens right away. I think there are things you slip into that are okay, and nobody's looking. You need somebody to say, hey, you're stepping awful close to that line to kind of wake you up, and give somebody the freedom to be able to say that to you and be safe in doing it. And I always have somebody who I do at work. I empower them to be that to me, and I have somebody at Google who does that for me. The second thing is I always say I run with a pack. I have a group of guy friends and a men's small group. I still have guys in Cincinnati that I do weekly accountability calls with, and we just talk about real life problems and real things that I'm dealing with and real life situations and struggles I have and things I'm thinking about and temptations. And they always bring me back to center because they're my North Star. They help me see truth. Because it's easy, and you guys are all successful. I mean, people put you on a pedestal when you don't deserve to be on a pedestal. I mean, we were just talking back when you came up here. You didn't say one thing about yourself. You talked about everybody else. You put everybody else on a pedestal. You didn't say hardly one thing about yourself. That is a guy I want to run in a pack with. And I try to find people like Jim who, really help me understand what grounding is. And those are my friends that I count very dear, and some of them are here tonight. And the last thing is I stay grounded in the Bible. And I know that sounds cliche, but I find when I'm drifting from the Word, I'm drifting from who I should be. And it helps me kind of center myself and know that, there's things that I should be doing that are important that maybe I'm not doing, and so it helps bring me back. So that's what I do.
Wow. How about a big round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you.